Welcome to Shakin Hands, where we provide the platform for entrepreneurs and thought leaders to share their stories in order to hopefully influence others to get out of the rat race and chase their own dreams. If you have any recommendations for guests or questions that you want to be asked, please don't hesitate to reach out. Anyways, if you enjoy the podcast, please like, comment, subscribe, and share in order to keep the podcast growing. Otherwise, I'm your host, Jack Moran, and this is Shakin Hands.
You a deadhead?
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
For sure, you?
Yeah, I've been to like 4
Dead & Co shows?
Dead & Co shows, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen Dead & Co twice. I thought it was all right. Like, I'm not a huge Mayer fan.
Yeah.
It sounds like you like him a lot.
Dude, I love Mayer.
Really? Yeah, I'm not a massive fan. But I guess Goose is coming next week.
You going? That's this weekend.
Yeah, this weekend. Are you going to go?
I'm going to Saturday show.
Really? Yeah, no, I don't have the... I don't have tickets, but I'd like to see them. So what?
Have you seen them before?
No, I haven't. And
Seen
so
Goose like 4 or 5 times.
really, so my take on Goose is like, I don't think that they're not in the echelon of the Grateful Dead and Fish for me. But my cousin, so I would have never gone and seen them.
Yeah.
Like just like guitarist wise, like I just think they're like not as sick. But my cousin gave me a good take, and he's a huge on the jam band scene. And he was like saying how when you go to a Goose show, because the audience is like so young in comparison to going to a Fish show, like you go and see Fish, you're seeing people whose prime was like in the 90s.
For
like,
sure.
They were our age in the 90s, and now they're just like old, decrepit, like recovering drug addicts.
Yeah.
So the energy is like kind of on a lower frequency, which the music's sick, but what he was explaining is like when you go to a Goose show, it's like seeing a Fish show in the 90s. Like you have that same energy. And obviously in a jam band, the crowd has a big influence on the music.
Oh, dude. The Fish fans would kick your ass for saying that. Because, I mean, I'm not a huge Fish fan. But, dude, like, they're like Swifties.
Oh,
They'll come after you.
it's a cult following.
Yeah, you talk shit on Fish, somebody's coming after you. And they probably have a grilled cheese.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so like that's my take on Goose now is like I would like to go see them because it would be interesting to see like a crowd with a lot of energy, which Fish doesn't really have anymore. I've seen a bunch of Fish shows.
Dude, there was some drama with Goose. Did you hear about that?
No.
Somebody banged somebody's girlfriend. Like one of the guys in the band banged one of the other guy's girlfriends. And like, yeah, it was messy. But dude, supposedly they kicked out the guy who banged the guy. They didn't kick out the guy who banged the guy's girlfriend. They kicked out the guy whose girlfriend got banged. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's ass backwards, dude. That violates all bro code.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
shit. I mean, I guess he just wasn't as good of a musician.
I think that's what it was.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
Are they like buddies?
But if
for
that's
life?
if that was your group of boys and one guy banged another guy's girlfriend, who you kicking out? Because you can't keep them both. They hate each other. You kicking out the guy that railed the guy's girlfriend, or are you kicking out the guy?
Well, I mean, you're trying to make money off the band, so you're
You're
like,
kicking out the better musician, or you're kicking out the worst musician.
yeah, maybe.
I feel like that's what you got.
I just think you got to keep your girlfriend away from him moving forward.
Yeah.
Lesson learned. I mean, the guy's just obviously a
Yeah, like-
weapon.
To hell with bro code. This guy can play the hell out of the guitar. I think he might be the keys guy,
Really?
the one that plays like 3 or 4 keys at one time.
He's the one who got kicked out, or he's the one that did the banging?
I think he was the banger,
Wow.
and he's got that dirty stash.
Oh,
Yeah, none of this is
Stashes
none of this is fact checked. I could be spreading rumors. I don't know if we're live or not.
sorry, Goose. They're coming to Charleston this weekend, so
Yeah.
they might come and find you.
Hide your kids, hide your wife, and hide your girlfriend too, because they're raping everybody out. You ever seen that video?
Yeah, of course.
He's from Alabama.
The guy who made that video?
Antoine Dodson. It was like a legit interview.
Yeah, isn't that like, wasn't it like an interview on the streets? Like there was some fire or something? Or
Somebody
was it?
tried to supposedly rape his sister, and he's like, "You don't have to come and confess. We gonna find you." He was like, "Hide everybody. Hide your girlfriend. Hide your wife, and hide your husband, because they're raping everybody out here."
Was that guy known before that video?
Oh no, he blew up though.
What does he do now?
I don't know. he's probably just
Jimmy?
chilling on residuals. He was like on Ellen and all kinds of shit though.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What's good with your podcast? Talk about that a little bit.
So curiosity woke the dog. The idea behind it is pretty similar to, what you're doing with Shaking Hands. It's like everybody's got a story, right? And I want to provide a platform where people are able to really share their story. And not only that, for the listener, it's going to educate them, empower them, and give them insight in what they can do to chase after their dream. So really, the whole idea is like behind the name, in order to figure out what you're passionate about, you got to become curious. Then you kind of figure out what lights your flame, and then it wakes you up. But then you got to be resilient. You got to be a dog in the pursuit of your effort if you really want to make some shit happen.
How'd you get into that?
Long story, dude. So like,
We got time.
we got nothing but time, man. So like, I used to organize music festivals and really enjoyed just bringing people together, right? Like creating a sense of community. And then I was going to quit my day job, quit my corporate job, and go all in on the music festival thing. I was just doing it on the side. And then the pandemic happened. And I'm like, all right, it's probably not the best time to go all in on a music festival. So I just started stacking paper, started working in renewable energy. And I'm doing that for the past 5 years. That's still my day job. But I kind of got that itch of like, I still want to bring people together, but I don't want to do a music festival where people are just like getting so fucked up that they forget their weekend. I want to do something that actually like empowers people to leave this weekend a new version of themselves, like a new and improved version of themselves. So I was like, I want to do events, but more like retreats where people grow. And I was like, well, what better way to do that than a podcast where I can create a sense of community through the guest and the listeners to hopefully be able to do that one day. So that's the plan.
Is this your first like venture starting on your own? Is the podcast? Or then was a music festival
Dude,
doing your own thing? Or
I've done so much random shit. Like I had a food tour company. I've had a consulting company. The most fun thing I've done on my own was definitely the music festival. Just to be able to like have an idea in your mind and then see everything come together with the stages. It was music and art. So we had like live artists like doing murals. And one of the guys that did a mural, he actually just came in, is a good buddy of mine. He came in town and did a mural on the inside of my Airstream, which is where I'm doing the Curiosity Woke the Dog podcast.
what did you take from all these other ventures that you're using in the podcast today that have helped you be successful at that venture?
Man, I think what we do today either empowers or restricts us going forward. So I'm a big believer in the experiences that you're getting on a day in and day out basis. They're going to make your life easier and your next venture easier, or if you slack, it's going to make it 10 times harder, So everything that has shaped me and my journey up to this point has made this next venture much more fulfilling and meaningful. And to me, the fuck ups are what I learned the most from, like trying to do a music festival during COVID. Like I just learned that it's our choice every single day. We really have 3 options. We can persist, we can pivot, or we can concede. And with that, I was like, all right, maybe it's time to concede on the music festival idea. Now I'm going to have to pivot into something else. And I knew whatever it is that I was going to do, I needed capital to be able to do it. And so that I took a 100% commission sales job. And when I did that, I had a lot of close friends and family members tell me like, hey, that is stupid. Like you're going to leave a 6-figure salary job and go all in on a 100% commission sales job. Like what is wrong with you? And I was like, look, if I'm bet on anybody, I got to bet on myself.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Did I tell you the first like thing I ever did in entrepreneurship was, or what started and catalyzed my entrepreneurship journey was
No, what's that?
door-to-door solar sales.
Dude, let's go.
Yeah, is that what you're doing?
I used to do that.
Yeah.
And now I do kind of that, but just for businesses.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we do like solar farms, we do like big commercial projects, industrial projects, stuff like that. So the same thing, but instead of going to a homeowner's door, knock, knock, knock,
Yeah.
we're going to a business's door. Knock,
Oh yeah.
knock. And instead of a $50,000 system, we're hoping to sell a $1 or $2 million system.
Yeah.
Same process though. And man, so many great entrepreneurs got their start in door to door.
Hell yeah.
Dude, it's tough. What's your craziest story from the doors?
I've got one good one. I brought on so I had been doing it for 4 or 5 months,
Yeah.
and then I got, good at it, and I was starting to make some good money. So all my buddies were just starting to graduate. I think it was like the summer right before COVID. And I got like 5 or 6 of my buddies to join the solar team.
Yeah.
I was managing them. It ended up getting up to like 10 guys that I was buddies with that were underneath me at this solar company. And probably like a month in, I was had this one kid, Mitch, like one of my good buddies, shadowing me, and we were going through this neighborhood, and I'd probably hit this door like, 7, 8 times, and no one came out. It's kind of like sketchy house. And around the house, like we're walking past it. And you know how you have your like little like phone app that like shows you which doors you've hit or whatever. So I'd hit it many times and no one had come out, so I had to go back on it or whatever. And out from back behind the house comes this guy with his like trash barrel, and I'm like, let's go, like we're gonna get this guy. And I go over to him and I'm like, what's up, man? Like, are you the owner here that pays for the electric bill? He's like, listen, man, unless you're interested in smoking crack or banging hookers, there is nothing for you at this house.
Yeah, I'm actually interested in both of those things.
Which we ended up shooting the shit with the guy, but like this kid who had just started working for us, shadowing me, was like, what the fuck?
So how'd you handle that?
I mean, the guy had zero interest
He
in
didn't
solar.
lie.
Yeah, but so no, I knew right then and
No
there
crack,
was-
no hookers?
There was nothing there with that guy, but and you definitely didn't have the credit.
Oh, yeah. With a question like that.
Yeah,
Speaking of credit, dude, I was just telling somebody this a couple days ago. Like, I learned so much from that job. And like, Jamie Foxx, he says you can learn more in 1 year doing door to door than you can 4 years
Does he?
of a He said he said you can learn more 1 year door to door than 4 years of college getting a communication degree, just about people. But not only communication, like one thing I noticed is when you would actually go in a house to close a deal, I could tell what their credit score was just by how many dishes they had in the sink, how clean their countertops were, how their shoes were organized, all of those things, like how well we take care of our home and our car. It's reflected in our bank account.
Well, it's like your house and your home and your environment is an externalization of your inner mindset. So if you're very cluttered and disorganized inside, you're probably going to look cluttered and disorganized outside. And you look at someone, I love the stories of like Steve Jobs, like he didn't even have furniture in his house because he thought it was a distraction. So this guy was, internally hyper focused on his goal, which was building the best computer in the world. And like, because of that, his external environment was clean of any distractions that didn't have a direct impact on that goal.
Damn,
just
that is
kind of crazy.
wild.
Yeah. Another one I'll say is it was always a mission when you would get the police called on you.
Yeah. You've done something right.
Yeah. Well,
You gotta have a hater.
but you would try to get the sale from the police officer. So
Oh, cops love solar.
yeah, so they'd come out and they'd be like, "What do you do in this neighborhood?" I'd be like, "Oh, funny you ask. Like, well, let me ask you this: are you the decision maker that deals with your electric bill?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Pull up your phone, pull up your electric bill, and I'll show you what we're doing."
Yeah. So what we do is we take the high power bill, replace it with a lower fixed rate solar if you qualify.
Yeah, and literally the exact same pitch. And so the guy's like, pulling up his bill or whatever, and his supervisor's like, "Put the phone away," like he sees her, it's gone.
Later.
So I came real close to getting a lead from a cop, but didn't hit it.
Closed a lot of cops.
Really?
Shout out the cops. They love solar, and they're always so cool.
Yeah,
Like they're like, yeah, Miss Karen over there, she's tripping. It's not that big of a deal, man. Like, can you just go to the other side of the neighborhood? I'm like, yeah, I got you, bro.
And it's constitutionally legal, right? Like they say, they try to kick you out of the neighborhoods, but you're allowed to door knock.
It depends on the neighborhood, but like, who cares, dude?
Yeah.
Come on, this is a capitalistic country.
Yeah.
Like we were founded on this. Like I miss the days like when it was normal to go out and just communicate with people in person. It's like now sales is not something that takes place over an email.
Right.
Because what are most people doing now to generate new leads? They're going to a fucking robot and they're saying, hey, ChatGPT, type me an email to send to this client. That's not how you connect with someone. You connect with someone by going and knocking on their door and shaking their hand.
Yeah.
Shout out shaking hands.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it's not called send an AI email. It's called shaking hands.
That's right.
So to me, door to door is like the most human form of sales we could possibly have.
And that's why I joined, out of college, I got what I thought was like a sexy job. I was working in this finance office with these guys who had all this money. And I was thinking like, if I want to make a lot of money, I got to get with these guys. But I wasn't really learning sales or anything like that. I was doing like administrative bullshit. And I had this buddy who didn't do as well in college, like kind of was the ugly duckling as far as like academics. And he went and got a door knocking job. And like,
Make it back.
yeah, 6-8 months later, he's
Yeah.
making 10K a month, and I'm like struggling to pay my bills.
Yeah.
So I ended up going, with him, and I'm thinking like, if I'm knocking 100 doors a day and making X amount of conversations, like I'm going to learn communication skills like pretty quickly. I'm going to understand relationships a lot better. So, and it was true. Like I got that I learned how to generate leads way faster and way easier. It was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Wow.
Best thing that ever happened to me. I mean, I was living in an office, like on an air mattress, to make the job work because I couldn't pay my bills. It took me 3 months to get my first sale, straight commission. But I was like, if I fucking make it doing this, like I can do anything. And so then,
Yeah.
6 months later, I'm like, dude, why am I not doing this for myself? Like I've had all these ideas in entrepreneurship, but I'm generating income with no one else helping me other than myself. I only get paid when I'm hunting. Like it's the exact same thing as starting my own company.
Yeah.
So I tried to structure a deal with the owner. He wasn't about it. And I was like, okay, I'm on my own. I'm on my own. And then packed up my car, went down to Florida, and I just used that same like mentality that I had in the door knocking and translated into the company. What's the biggest thing you learned or you've learned from door-to-door sales?
I was gonna ask you the same thing. Dude, so much. But the number one thing I learned from door to door is don't take anything personally.
Yeah.
So there's this story I love. One of my reps, he knocked on this door, and this guy comes out just dog cussing him. Get the fuck off my property. This is a no soliciting neighborhood, yada, yada, yada. Like literally, and like his aunt is the rep, is a black guy. And he's like backing up. He's like, hey, look, man, like I'm just doing my job. Yes, sir. He's being respectful to him. He's being cool. The guy's still screaming, get the fuck off my property. And so they end up out in the street, and aunt just looks at him. He's like, hey, brother, are you okay? Like, is everything all right? Like genuinely, not being a smart ass. Like, hey man, like, is everything okay? And the guy just starts bawling, crying. And he's like, my wife left me. I thought I was going to play pro soccer and I broke my legs. This has just been the worst year of my life. Starts bawling, crying, and just hugs him.
No way.
And that's like one of my favorite stories of just like human connection, because we're all going through it, dude, like in some shape, form, or fashion. But empathy is power, and I think a lot of times salespeople, they get so bogged down and be resilient, got to do more. It's like, dude, be a human.
Yeah.
That spiritual connection, that's what sells, and having empathy is way more powerful than just trying to bulldoze through everybody,
Right.
So that was the main thing I learned is don't take everything personally, because the way somebody treats you says 10 times more about them than it does you.
Have you read the 4 Agreements?
Yeah, it's a great book. And that's one of the agreements. Don't take anything personally.
Yeah.
Because, if somebody loves you, that everything's a mirror, like if you just see the beauty in everything, that's just your lens of looking at life, because you see beauty in yourself and others. If you're just an angry asshole, just because you're an asshole to me doesn't mean I suck, or I'm an asshole, or I'm a nuisance.
In like from the book, the perspective's pretty interesting. It makes it like, you're kind of a narcissist if you take it personally. It's like if someone's having a bad day and they say something mean to you and you take that personally, it's like you're making everything about yourself. It's like just because they said something mean to you, to think that it is because of you is like kind of like a self-centered way to think. So when you put that connotation on it, you're like, damn, okay.
Dude, you ever read The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho?
That's one of like I read it this year actually. That is like one of the sickest books I've ever read in my entire life.
Did you read I think it's like a foreword, and it tells a story of narcissists. I don't think it's in every copy of the book.
Yeah,
You know what I'm talking
the,
about?
the lake or whatever.
Yeah, and like
He's at the lake.
he's looking at his reflection, and they're like, you're narcissistic, you're obsessed with your reflection. And then the lake was crying, and they're like, why are you weeping? And the lake didn't miss seeing the lake missed seeing like her reflection in the guy's eye. And it's almost like we're all narcissistic to some extent. Like we're all inherently selfish beings. It doesn't make us narcissistic in a negative way,
Yeah. No, that book is like top tier. And it's like, I mean, I was glued to that. I read that in one day. Typically like it takes discipline for me to read a business book because they're so dry, which that had so many like principles that you would get from a typical business book, but it was an interesting like
It's just a
story.
life book, dude.
Yeah,
Like, what was your main takeaway from The Alchemist?
And I'll tell you, going back, there were so many gems that were thrown at me in that book that like I wish I had written down when they hit me because I've lost them. But I'd say the biggest one that I liked was the universal language. He talks about like,
Omens.
yeah, like
Yeah.
the universal language that everyone understands and like,
Music.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah. So that was a good one. I mean, obviously following your purpose is like, or like you're finding your purpose and like following your dreams is a big underlying theme, but it was kind of like the little side stories, in the smaller
Yeah,
movies.
like enjoying the journey and the small wins throughout.
Yeah.
I like the quote from the book. It's like, when everyone truly wants something, the whole universe conspires in helping them achieve their dream.
Yes. There's like a lot of like principles from the law of attraction in there.
Yeah.
It's like
And
manifestation.
yeah, and like I almost hate how much manifestation just gets thrown around, you know? It's like become this like woo-woo, like, you know, crazy witch chick thing. But like there's a lot of power to it, man. But you gotta act on it. You can't just be like, oh, I'm gonna speak it into existence and then not do anything. Like, but I think telling people your goals is so powerful because not only is it going to speak it into existence, now I tell you my goals and I run into a year from now, you're like, hey, bro, how's that goal coming along? So there's accountability there.
Yeah. And it makes sense to me. Like, like for me, how I kind of, and I conceptualize and ponder a lot, like kind of what's going on in reality. And I think of like reality as this just like abundance, like where every possibility exists. And I think that your perception, you have the ability to perceive whatever you want. Like that's kind of like free will to me. And so it makes sense to me, manifestation. It's like when your mind is set on a goal and your actions are congruent with that goal, like you are going to perceive the outcomes that you, that you desire.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
So you ponder a lot? What's like your pondering time, or is there like a place? Like, the reason I ask is I think so many of us these days are just so busy all the time
Yeah.
that like there's not a whole lot of time to truly think deeply,
Yeah.
you know, like because there's so much, and not just busy with productive things, but just stimuli all the time
Yeah.
from our phones and TVs and everything. So like, how do you make time in your life to just ponder?
I meditate at least an hour a day. So that's a good time for me, but that's
What's
more.
that look like to you?
So there's two different practices that I go through. I'll do like a visualization meditation, which is almost like a self-hypnotism. So in a visualization meditation, you're making your brain more neuroplastic and you have the ability to rewire experiences. Like, so that would be like the result of a, visualization meditation would be imagining something and you can start like rewiring the way your brain thinks. So for instance, like if you've had a trauma, that trauma is hardwired in your brain. If you can get that, you can visualize that trauma, your brain becomes more neuroplastic and you have the ability to rewire those neural connections that have been like tattooed in your brain. So you can visualize that trauma again, but re-anchor it to maybe an experience that's pleasurable and bias that experience to be less of a negative emotion associated with it. So that would be like a visualization meditation. And then on the other hand, there's like, the meditation that you set your intention to focus on a meditation object. This is like a mental rep. It's a more of like a workout for your brain is this exercise of meditation. So you set your intention to focus on a meditation object, which is for me typically like my breath. So I will set the intention before the practice. Okay, for an hour, I am going to focus on my breath and keep my focus, discipline myself to keep my focus on my breath. And as simple as that sounds, okay, you just got to focus on your breath. Within 10 seconds, I'm thinking about, my business. I'm thinking about a million other things. And the practice is to notice as quickly as possible that your mind has wandered and then bring it back to that meditation object. So the two measurements that you would gauge if you are getting better at that practice is how fast you realize that you have gone off track, and then the amount of time that you can, the duration of time that you can stay focused on that without getting distracted. So
Yeah.
to measure if you're getting better, you would want that time of focus to be longer, and then the time distracted to be less, or time until noticing that you're distracted. So why is that an important practice? Look at in the real world. People set goals all the time, and you set the goal that I'm going to make. I've only been hitting 15 doors a day when I'm a door knocker, but I want to hit 50 because that will lead to X amount more money. And so you set that goal, and then the first week you're doing it, and then something comes along where you have a new girl in your life or something. And so that takes priority over the goal that you just set. And so it's realizing that, okay, I have gotten off track of that goal, and then bringing yourself back to what is the like overarching goal that you have in life. So it's like a small scale controlled practice of of disciplining your mind is that meditation practice, which is very impactful for the real world. So those are the two
I love
practices.
that. Yeah, and thanks for sharing that. I think it's super fascinating how everybody has their own meditation routine, at least for those that do meditate, and it looks
you?
so different for everyone.
Do you meditate at all?
I do, yeah. I like a combination of guided. There's so many good guided meditations on YouTube, and there's guided meditations for anything.
Yeah.
Like I'll go to YouTube and look up guided meditation. Like if I'm feeling sick, like I'll search like guided meditation for a sore throat. And like, dude, it's wild. They have
It's
things that will just
crazy.
fix it. It's nuts. So I like guided, but I've also learned a lot from some of the people I've had on my podcast. Like I had my grandma on my podcast. She was actually the first one I did, and she's an author. And she was kind of talking about the importance of being present. And she said the way that she like gets more, focused on the present moment is being in touch with her five senses. So I learned that from her. And then I had another guy on the podcast, older guy, like in his late 80s, and he was talking about the importance of mindfulness. And he said his favorite way to meditate is just to walk with his dog. So, like we can find meditation so many different ways. Like one of my best friends, the way he meditates is he does his dishes. So like mindfulness and meditation, it doesn't look the same for everyone, and it shouldn't. Like there
Yeah.
shouldn't be some guidebook for how to meditate. It's like what brings you into the present moment and makes you forget about all of the shit that you should be worrying about right now.
And it's like, it's interesting to see there's different ways people think. Like some people, their attention is more in the future. They're thinking about things in the future. Some people are hung up on the past, and that's where their mind goes. And it's very difficult to be a person. And there are people that are in the present. I'm not one of those. I'm typically in the future. So how do you get yourself like into this moment and like bring your mind back present? And I think the first thing is having the awareness of where your mind, usually is at.
Yeah. And there's this quote I really like. Goes something along the lines of like, those that live in the past are typically depressed. Those that live in the future tend to be anxious, but those that live in the present moment are at peace.
Yeah, I'm definitely a
And
little
I'm also
anxious.
somebody that is always living in the future, or I have been in the past. And I have this really amazing lady in my life right now that has really helped me just be in the present. And that has made me so much of a better podcast host, because she's really taught me how to listen. And I've had over the past 6 months of doing podcasts, I've had like a dozen people tell me like, you're a great listener. And I'm like, I don't think anybody's ever told me that in my life, but she's made me more present, and that's made me a better listener.
What are the tools that she's given you that have helped you to become more present?
To just fucking pay attention, and like, don't always be thinking about what you're going to say next. Just listen and take
Yeah.
it in.
Well, it can be difficult as a podcast host to
Oh,
like,
I know, because
yeah.
you're steering the conversation.
Yeah.
But I'm high, I don't take Adderall or anything, but I'm definitely like high functioning ADHD. So my mind has the ability to be in like 7 different places at once, but I'm still all here, when you're talking or when somebody's talking. And not only does being a good listener make me a better podcast host, like it's helped me a ton in sales too.
Yeah.
Because then it's not just all about me and my words and my product. It's like more about what matters to you. and then you create a custom tailored solution for that person. And that's so much more powerful than some just plug and play cookie cutter approach.
And that's something you can definitely feel. Like I feel comfortable talking to you, number one, and I can see that you're engaged. You have, very direct eye contact. Like it's an energy exchange, like
Yeah.
knowing that you are present, and it feels good as the adversary to be like, this is someone that is genuinely listening to me, and like
Yeah.
it's a comfortable feeling as opposed to someone who's like anxious or
Yeah. Yeah.
different feeling. It's uncomfortable.
I know exactly what you mean. And I appreciate that because I hadn't always been that way, man. Like I've been the person that's just thinking about a million things at one time, and I'm sitting here talking to you, but I'm thinking about what I need to do when I'm done. And I think being present is just like, to me, one of the most important things in life. When you're at work, be at work.
Yeah.
When you're at home and you're with your family or you're with your friends, be with your family or friends. Don't make the two coexist. And I think those lines have gotten so blurred in this work from home era. And I hate the work from home thing. I work from home a decent amount, more than I would like to. But I think it's hard because our minds associate different places with different actions, So like if I'm in my office, I'm going to associate that with productivity.
Interesting.
But
Yeah.
if I make my bedroom my office and then I go to lay in bed and try to fall asleep at night, I'm thinking about emails.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be thinking about emails.
Or vice versa. When I'm trying to work, I'm thinking about sleeping.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's no good. And I think have you read the book Atomic Habits?
I've read some of that book. I have not finished that book.
He talks about that in the book. Like he talks about the importance of having different places to do different things.
Interesting. Yeah. And it is that, again, it's that, like, we talk about that neuroplasticity. You're anchoring, like wiring different habits to different experiences. And it becomes hardwired. Like you said, like being in your bedroom hardwires you to be comfortable and be asleep, not work.
Yeah. The brain is incredible, man.
Oh,
And
it's
like
so fast.
going back to how we associate different, actions with different things, even like if you chew a certain flavor of bubble gum while you're studying and then you take a test with that same flavor of bubble gum, you're more likely to remember things for the test. One of my
sick.
buddies was telling me that he had a teacher in high school that would, when he was teaching lessons, he would play classical music in the background. And then when they would take the test, he would play the same song. And it's supposed to like associate, you remember the music and it makes you remember the material.
Yeah. You're anchoring it together.
Crazy, man.
Yeah. It's
like the mind is so much more powerful than we give it credit for.
And so, like, let's talk about like sales. Like, you can anchor the experience. If you're a good person that makes people feel comfortable, you're going to anchor that emotion to the memory of you. And you want to be that person where anytime your phone call comes up, that person thinks that I'm going to feel good, because you've associated that good feeling. Whereas if you're always a person that's bringing bad news, the opposite's going to happen. You're like anchoring this negative emotion to yourself, and no one's going to want to pick up your call.
Isn't that the worst? Like there's some people, their name pops up on my phone. I'm like, hell yeah. Like my buddy called me on the way here, Bennett. And I'm like, hell yeah, Bennett. I'm glad you called, man. Like it's good. I'm excited to catch up. And there's some people that pop up, I'm like, oh God.
And you're anchoring an emotion to them. Like,
yeah.
It's like if you have this repeated pattern where you feel like shit with a person, like that emotion's going to come up. They might have the best news for you in the world, but because the past 10 experiences you've had with them have been negative, like that emotion is going to come up because it's been anchored.
Dude, and that should be a goal that we should all have. It's like, be the type of person that when you call somebody and your name pops up on their phone, they should be excited to pick up.
Hell yeah.
They should not dread it.
It's great advice.
Yeah, and so like, what do you think we can do in our everyday interactions to be the type of person that when your name pops up, they're excited?
I mean, just be positive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
be like a pleasant person to be around.
Yeah. And I mean, just like being that source of good energy, like people become very dependent on that, and they want to reach out to you. They want to be around you. So like reading a lot of psychology books that with the interest of being better at my job and business, like you find that like just like caring about people, listening to people, like being positive to them, like makes them much more willing to engage with you.
Oh, and dude, it can spread like a virus.
Yeah.
Like, I love observing teams, whether it's like on a sports team or a, business team, like a sales team. And there's always that one person that maybe they're not the leading scorer or the leading salesperson, but they're just that vibe guy.
Yeah.
And they're just positive. People love being around them. They're the fucking MVP, dude.
Hell yeah. And it has a ripple effect on everyone
On
else.
everyone.
Yeah.
And then they leave and the whole team's vibe plummets,
What habits do you have that you implement every single day that you think result in not only happiness, but productivity, anything positive?
I love cold plunging. Like, that brings me into the present
Jason said the
moment.
same.
Yeah, like, I love a plunge, and so, like, just moved into my new place, over this past weekend, and it has one of those, like, round barrel house saunas, and right now, I'm gonna get a cold plunge in the spring, but right now I'm just using the pool. It's frigid,
Yeah.
and so I'll just kinda bounce back and forth between the 2, but that makes me more productive for the rest of the day 'cause, you know, you plunge? You like
So I get in these cycles. I don't have a cold plunge, but I get
Yeah.
in these cycles of like taking a cold shower in the morning. So
Cold showers are great.
I'm in that cycle right now, and especially because it's cold
Yeah.
out, they're cold fucking
I
showers.
love it.
But it's
I
like
hate it in the summertime, dude. Like, I tried to turn on a cold shower in the summer and
lukewarm.
that's the worst.
Yeah.
But the pipes are finally cold. I love it.
When you get out of it, it's like you just feel like a machine.
Alive, dude.
Yeah.
Like, the colors are prettier. Everything just feels good. And then, you're just able to crank things out the rest of the day.
And it's just like that meditation, it's like a small scale controlled environment workout for life. Like you have to go into something that is uncomfortable for you, that you don't want to do, and you come out of it like a better person and feeling better.
Oh,
As
yeah.
like any uncomfortable situation I find is where growth comes from.
Yeah. And habits, like, there's a thing, it's like habit stacking. You wake up in the morning and you plunge, your mind is already getting dopamine, like whatever the first dopamine response that the brain receives in the morning, it's going to crave that same dopamine response for the rest of the day. So if you're getting it from doing a hard thing, like getting in a cold plunge or taking a cold shower or having the discipline to make your bed, now you're going to stack those habits in a productive, positive manner for the rest of the day.
Absolutely.
But if you wake up and you start doom scrolling, your mind's going to look for that dopamine for the rest of the day.
Yeah. It's super interesting.
So I think those first 30 minutes are huge. And
You got to get off to the right start of the day.
and I think, like you mentioned, taking an hour to meditate, like that's something that I need to be better about, because I like to read too, and read memoirs, biographies about CEOs, and I love psychology, and so many super successful people meditate first thing when they wake up for an hour.
Yeah, and like you said, I'm in the same boat with like having high functioning ADD. It's like just a way for me to get away from that, because when you're thinking at that rate, it's very draining. Like it uses a lot of energy. So even just 10 minutes of that quiet mind gives because even when you're asleep, people don't realize your brain is still firing and still consuming energy, because there's processes that are going on in your brain while you're sleeping as well. So when you do that conscious effort to turn everything off, even 10 minutes can have a massive effect on the rest of your day, because you're finally giving your brain that rest that it needs.
I wonder if that makes you burn more calories.
Thinking or meditating?
Both.
100%.
It's got to.
It requires energy to be thinking.
Yeah, like it should boost your metabolism.
Yeah, I'm sure it
New
does.
weight loss technique.
I'm sure it does.
Yeah, it's got to be good for you.
Who is the best guest that you've had so far on your podcast?
Ooh, that's tough, bro. I mean, for sentimental reasons, like I gotta say my grandma.
Yeah.
They have all been incredible in their own unique way. Kate counts. She's a yoga instructor. She does like courthouse yoga.
I saw that you had her on.
Dude, she is a wealth of wisdom.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
just like, I mean, I'm like, did you go to Mars to get all this wisdom? Like, how do you, it's like she has the secrets to the universe or something. But I mean, I think the people that have struggled the most have the most wisdom. And like, she's a recovering alcoholic. She's done the work, you know, she's got the discipline, she's got wisdom, she's got life experience. Um, that, that was one of my favorites to record for personal reasons, just because I feel like I walked away with like 15 nuggets of wisdom that I didn't have before. But dude, all of them have been really good in their own way.
Have you ever been to our yoga classes at the Poorhouse?
I love going to Sunday morning Poorhouse class because you get out of it, and I've been a few times like hungover as hell. I know you don't really
in a
drink.
bad mood.
You leave in a euphoric state, and then not only that, you leave out of there, and it's just like this little oasis of all these happy vendors that have baked bread and coffee and all this stuff, and I'm just like, yeah, that is the ideal way to start a Sunday to me, is go to Poorhouse Yoga and then walk around the farmers market.
Yeah, she's very conscious of like energy exchange too. Like she knows how to push positivity into a crowd and like get that to resonate, and you can feel it. Like you can feel this like energy shift while you're there.
Yeah.
And then that has a ripple effect because you're in a better mood. You're going to translate that mood to, you know, if you walk out and walk around the farmer's market, to the people that are, you know, the vendors, and then they're going to have a good experience with you, which is going to catalyze them to have better experiences. So it like that energy
That
continues
amazing.
going. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and you think about, since the beginning of time, like man has always wanted to achieve immortality, but like we can achieve that through our actions. You know, think about what we were just talking about. Kate does every Sunday. It's like she's got 100 people on this deck, and she creates a ripple effect of positivity and just being a better human. And we can do that every single day with an interaction as simple as somebody you see at the grocery store. Like my great grandfather, I called him Granddaddy. His name was Sledge. Isn't that a badass name? From Alabama.
Yeah.
Just good old Southern gentleman. And he, everywhere he went, he talked to everybody, you know, and he would talk whether you were the CEO or you were bagging his groceries or you were the janitor, he talked to everyone the same. And like I learned that from him, to like treat everyone with respect, regardless of if they have anything to offer you or anything that might benefit you, or if they're richer than you or poorer than you should treat everyone the same, talk to them the same. And I think as a society, we've lost that. Like, because people don't talk to the person at the drive-thru or the person bagging their groceries like they're a person, you know?
Yeah, and if you think about it, like you talk about that immortality, like every action that you make is eternal. You know, like you bring positive energy, and you know, what's her name? Kate?
Kate.
Yeah, Kate at her Poorhouse Yoga sessions or classes, she gives a positive compliment to someone, and it makes them feel better. So they're a little bit more positive. Like that ripple effect is going to continue on eternally. Although it, you know, 4 people out, you know, it might not be measurable anymore. You won't really be able to see the effects, but it's going to continue in some capacity. It goes on and on and on and on and on. And it's the same thing if you're negative. Like really, like every single action that you bring into this universe is going to have that ripple effect that will continue on for eternity. So it's like, which effect do you want to have on this world? And I think that's something that people should be conscious of, is like, if we are all positive, imagine the power that you can have in this universe again.
Yeah. And you get what you give. So like karma's a hell of a thing, man. And it can be a bitch or it can be beautiful. It's all about what you put out, because it's going to come back to you eventually.
Yeah.
You know, and I had another important thing to tell you that I forgot.
We're talking about Kate. You're talking about
immortality, karma. Yeah. You get what you give.
Okay.
Yeah. I had another thing. It'll probably come back to me. It usually, in the ADHD brain, it'll make its
Come
way
full
back
circle.
around. Yeah.
In the meantime, what's the biggest nugget that you've gotten doing the podcast thus far?
Everybody's got a story, man. Like when I started doing the podcast, I selfishly was looking for people that would like, you know, improve my platform. Like, oh, this guy's got this many followers. Now his followers are going to be my followers. And like, what I've learned is like some of those people are like not always the best people to have on a podcast, because everybody wants to hear what they have to say already, you know? And sometimes my favorite people to get on a podcast are like the ones that don't have this massive social media following, because their voice matters as much as Matthew McConaughey's,
100%.
like, and they appreciate it so much. Like, and that's been super fulfilling to me, is to have people on the show that maybe aren't like famous, but like they got wisdom to share, and they're so appreciative, and I love that, because making people feel like their voice matters.
And it does. And it's like, I know we talked before this when you came on, you're like, what's the play here? And it's like, I think that we have found recently that the naturally evolving conversations are the best conversations. Like I had Luke on the other day, and we started talking about like acting or whatever, because that's what he's doing. And quickly it got to this like existential conversation about like finding your true self. And if I had like a lined up, list of questions for him, we would have never gotten to that. So I've figured out, like through doing this for a little while now, that it's better for me to not prepare whatsoever. And then a lot of times Sam will book the guest and I don't know their name 5 minutes before I get there.
Wow.
And I purposely do that because then it's like, okay, you're sitting here and I genuinely have to sit here and get to know you and ask questions based off where the conversation goes and like what is actually my interest in that person. So then it, is a natural conversation. I think that's what people want to see, is authenticity.
Yeah. No, and props to you for being able to do that, because you got to be able to pick up on somebody's like vibe, and then also like what their source of wisdom is and what they're passionate about.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we can take into everyday life, whether you're a podcast host or not. It's like when you're having a conversation with somebody, don't sit here and be like, oh yeah, well the weather is fine today. How about that rain today, man? Yeah.
And that's a practice
We
that I
don't
think that's a practice people can get better at, is like asking good questions.
Yeah.
Deep questions, thoughtful questions to get to the core of someone.
Yeah. And like, as a host, how do you know when you've gotten to the core? Like, what are you looking for?
Well, I think you're kind of like chasing those little breadcrumbs and
Mhm.
I mean, do I have like an actual framework to do it? I would say I'm paying attention to like micro expressions. You can feel the energy when someone wants to talk about something, and like it just like kind of self perpetuates itself. So I don't have like a strategy that I'm going down, trying to get to a person's core. But I think it's like a naturally intuitive thing that humans are able to do, is like ask questions and get to know a person. And like I think when you're not trying to accomplish some external goal and you're just genuinely trying to get to know a person, if that's your intention, that's what's going to be the outcome. Something that we've done like recently that's been a practice that I think we've gotten more authentic conversations off of is I noticed being on someone else's podcast, he was like talking to us and blah, blah, blah. And like, I always gave intros for my podcast. And I asked him like in the middle of the podcast, I'm like, all right, so when are we going to start? He's like, dude, we're like rolling right now.
That's how a lot of guys do it. Rogan does it that way.
And so I've realized like
Yeah.
once I went through that process, I noticed when I was giving that intro, I would be having a conversation with the person, like when we sat down, when Sam's doing the, testing and the mic, and we'd have like, I talked to you before this, like I'd be asking all the good questions before and we'd be getting the good responses. Then I'd give the intro on the podcast and turn the spotlight to the guest, and I'd see this veil go over them, like this mask where they're like, I have the pressure, the anxiety that I'm on the show now. And now I have to portray this like character that's not truly their authentic self. So now we've gone into that process of just like starting the conversation when you sit down, and then, the camera's just rolling, and then we get into the podcast. And I think it's impossible to completely remove that mask from a person, because, Luke said it, you put the mask on before you even, get into the building, when you're going to have a podcast today, or when you wake up, like your true authentic self and what everyone else sees, you are portraying something at all times. So like, how can we implement strategies to get past that mask? You'll never be able to do it 100%, but like there are ways to, get past a person's, what they're trying to portray and who they really are,
Dude, that's spot on. That's a great insight. I've noticed that with people, because like I'll have them send their bio, and then like I'll sit here and read their bio, and you really do see them kind of get in their little, hermit crab shell.
Yeah. And so how can we as like podcast hosts get through that? And like, I'm learning a lot of lessons from doing this podcast, because it's like true in, real life too. Like, I ask people this question all the time, like, is the voice inside your head the same person as the person everyone else sees? And for me, it's not, like I have like a different person internally, but then I like portray what I want other people to see. And then also you have to realize like that voice that you hear inside your head is being driven by your brain, which also has biases, which also is not you.
Yeah.
So how do you get even deeper than that? You know?
I love the people who have the same voice inside of their head that's outside, and like special needs people, for example, they have no filter. And it's so funny. Like when I went to college at University of Alabama, and I started this program there called Special Olympics College UA, and it was like a unified flag football team with like Special Olympic athletes and then college students at Alabama. And we would like travel across SEC and like play, a few other teams a year and have practices. And it was just so funny, man. I have a plethora of stories from that time. But like one of my buddies, he's a quarterback on the team, and he was one of the Special Olympic athletes. And like I'd pick him up, and he'd be like, is your girlfriend gonna come to the game? Can you ask her to wear something pretty?" And I'm like, "Bro, come on now. It's my girl. What are you doing?" And like,
But he's being
all
real.
the guys are the same. Like all my homies probably want to see my girl in something pretty too, bastards. But like they just having no filter. How can you not love that, man? I
Yeah.
think there's something we can learn from those people. I don't know what the politically correct term is these days, but I guess special needs. Like there's so much we can learn from those people because they're just so pure,
Yeah.
And going back to authenticity, like people are attracted to authenticity, and like I think the most likable personalities that I think about, like Shaquille O'Neal, Matthew McConaughey, like those guys, to me, they just seem so real, And those are my favorite people.
And how do you like it's impossible. I think it's impossible to truly communicate how you feel on the inside because what do we have?
It takes courage.
What are the mechanisms that we have are flawed? Like, what is the mechanism to communicate that feeling of being sad? You have language,
Yeah.
but can language, the word sad, truly encapsulate the feeling that you are feeling within? And like your sad might be different from someone else's sad, but we have that same common word that is flawed. Again, it's like so that's why like music and art's so awesome is because it's another language that you're communicating emotion and that you're externalizing your internal emotions in another way,
Mhm.
So it's like
Like the Alchemist, the
exactly
universal language.
yes.
And it's crazy. There's things we can do to tap into that. Like, have you ever done acid?
Yeah.
I figured when I saw the Grateful Dead shirt.
I don't do that stuff
But,
anymore, but I have
yeah,
for
like,
sure.
I've done it a few times, and, like, the first time I did it was at Bonnaroo, and I've that's when I wrote down, like, I called it, like, a reflection, I called it a reflection, and, like, I just, like, typed it in the notes on my phone a few days later, like, all my takeaways, and one of the takeaways was, music is the universal language, and art really, you could expand that any type of art. It just connects people, and anytime it can create an emotional response, whether it's a painting or a song or words, anything, but it has the ability to create a response and it connects people. And
That's
I
so
think
true.
the other part of that with connection, you were asking like, what can we do to be better hosts? I think first we have to create an environment where people feel safe and they trust us, because what we say is out there forever. And that's scary because you don't know who's going to hear it. So one, they got to trust us. And two, there has to be true, authentic connection there in order for them to feel like they're able to be authentic. And I think the two enemies of authenticity are ego and the inability to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And
Fantastic advice.
yeah, and it's the ego is the enemy, and it takes courage to be vulnerable. But if you can be vulnerable, that allows for true, genuine connection and authenticity.
What is your definition of success? That'll be my last question for you.
Waking up every day and doing what the fuck you want to do.
Freedom.
Freedom.
That's a recurring theme that we hear from a lot of our guests.
Yeah.
I think I can relate to that too.
What's your definition of success?
Yeah, I think freedom is a big one. Freedom's a big motivator for why I started on this journey. But I've realized that it doesn't take entrepreneurship like to be free. Like, it doesn't take starting your own business to be free. We have the ability to feel and experience life in the exact way that we want right now. It's just having the discipline to control your mind and control your outlook. And that is true free will. We do have
Um,
the ability to experience whatever we want whenever we want it. It doesn't take some external thing to give you that freedom, which is beautiful to me. Like, we do have that freedom right now
Yeah.
to experience whatever we want, however we want it.
America.
Hell yeah,
Yeah, I
baby.
love how you said, like, talking about external validation and internal. And I think so many times we define success by external,
Material
variables. Yeah,
things.
material things. It's like, what do other people think about me? How much money's in my bank account? Like, that's not success. Success comes from like truly what's within. And it's like, how do you feel about yourself? Because you can make millions and bajillions of dollars, but like, if you sell your soul along the way, ain't no money that's going to bring happiness or freedom there. It's like, how can you accomplish what you want to accomplish and feel good about it, and also helping other people,
Yeah.
and spreading that positivity and those good vibes to other people.
Yeah, and it's going to have a lasting effect if you do.
Yeah.
Well, some unbelievable advice, and it's inspiring what you're doing, and your mindset is and your values clearly. What's the word I'm looking for? They resonate. Like, I
Yeah.
can feel your
Likewise.
values. Yeah, appreciate it. So I appreciate you coming out, and if anyone wants to get a hold of you and they're interested in like reaching out to you, or want to see the podcast, where can they find you?
So it's on Spotify, Curiosity Woke the Dog, Instagram, c.w.t.d. And then my personal Instagram is Jonathan_Smith7.
All right, brother. I appreciate you coming out.
Hey man, this is a blast.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Yep. All right, man.